Right now, billions of dollars of elite Russian naval power are floating in the Mediterranean Sea, entirely cut off from their home port. They have the missiles, they have the highly trained crews, they have the fuel, but they are completely and utterly stranded. Why? Because a single country, holding a key to a waterway less than a mile wide, looked at Russia's mighty fleet and said, no. But the real shock isn't just that the Russian Navy is locked out of its own backyard. It's what is happening right now, just west of Istanbul. Turkey is quietly digging a massive, multi-billion-dollar trench through the earth that will rewrite the rules of global naval power forever. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how a piece of paper from 1936 became the ultimate weapon in modern warfare, and why Turkey's unthinkable new mega-project has every superpower on Earth sweating. Imagine you're an admiral in the Russian Navy. You command the Black Sea Fleet. Your ships are painted a menacing slate grey, packed with caliber cruise missiles capable of leveling a city block from hundreds of miles away. You are the undisputed heavyweight champion of these waters. But as you stand on the bridge of your flagship, looking out at the dark, choppy waves, you know a terrifying geographical truth. You are sitting in a bathtub, and someone else controls the drain. For 300 years, Russian czars, Soviet premiers, and modern presidents have all shared the exact same nightmare. They look at a map and they see a prison. Russia is the largest country on Earth, spanning 11 time zones. But look at its coastlines. The northern ports in the Arctic, frozen solid and choked with ice for half the year. The eastern ports in the Pacific, thousands of miles away from Europe, boxed in by rival nations. To project power, to be a true global empire, you need the ocean, you need warm water, and the only viable warm water pool Russia has is the Black Sea. But there is a fatal flaw in the Black Sea. It only has one exit. To reach the Mediterranean, and from there the oceans of the world, every single Russian ship must pass through a narrow, winding ribbon of water called the Bosporus Strait. Pattern interrupt. Here is a crazy fact. The Bosporus isn't some remote, heavily guarded military zone. It runs directly through the middle of Istanbul. We are not talking about a wide open channel. In some places, the Bosphorus is less than half a mile wide. Picture this. You are a civilian in Istanbul, a city of 15 million people. You are sitting on a cafe balcony in the morning. You can smell roasted chestnuts from a street vendor. You can hear the call to prayer echoing from ancient minarets. And right there, just a few hundred yards away, gliding silently past your coffee cup, is a 600-foot Russian Slava-class cruiser loaded with high explosives. It is surreal. Residents of Istanbul can literally sit in their living rooms and wave to foreign sailors, manning heavy machine guns on the decks of passing destroyers. For decades, this was just a quirky reality of daily life. The massive ships would slide through the city under suspension bridges choked with rush hour traffic, navigating the treacherous, swirling currents of the strait. But it wasn't just a daily commute, it was an uneasy truce. Because Turkey owns both sides of that strait. They own the water, and under international law, they hold the power to shut the door. To understand how Turkey just trapped the Russian fleet, we have to go back to a dusty room in Switzerland in 1936. The world was preparing for World War II. Nations were terrified of massive fleets bombarding their cities. So, a group of diplomats sat down and signed a document called the Montreux Convention. On the surface, it sounds incredibly boring. It's a maritime rulebook, but in reality, it is a weapon of mass geography. The Montreux Convention essentially says this: in times of peace, the Bosphorus is a free highway. Civilian ships, oil tankers, and even warships can pass through, provided they give Turkey a heads up. Pattern interrupt. But wait, what happens in times of war? That is where Article 19 of the treaty kicks in. Article 19 is the trapdoor. It states that if there is a war, and Turkey is not directly involved, Turkey has the absolute right to ban any warships from the warring nations from passing through the strait. For over 80 years, this rule was the ghost haunting the Black Sea. It was a theoretical threat, a what if, until February 24th, 2022. When Russian tanks rolled across the border into Ukraine, the sky filled with smoke and the world held its breath. Russia's strategy relied heavily on its navy. They needed to launch missiles from the sea. They needed to block Ukrainian grain shipments. They needed overwhelming naval dominance. But there was a problem. A chunk of Russia's naval power was sitting outside the Black Sea in the Mediterranean. They had cruisers, destroyers, and submarines that they desperately needed to move into the war zone to support the invasion. The Russian commanders gave the order to move north, to cross the Mediterranean, enter the Dardanelles, slide through the Bosporus, and join the fight in the Black Sea. They approached the gate, and Turkey locked it. 4 days after the invasion began, the Turkish government stepped up to the microphone and invoked Article 19 of the Montreux Convention. They declared a state of war existed, and they legally, completely, and unapologetically shut the straits to all warships. Imagine the panic in the Russian command rooms. You have to understand the sheer human frustration of this moment. Russian sailors on ships in the Mediterranean could literally look at maps and see their home ports, but they couldn't go home. If they tried to force their way through the strait, it would mean attacking Turkey, a NATO member, which would trigger World War III. They were paralyzed by a piece of paper and a strip of water. But the trap didn't just lock Russian ships out, it locked the existing Black Sea fleet in. At first, this didn't seem like a problem for Russia. They still had a massive armada inside the Black Sea, right off the coast of Ukraine. They felt invincible. But then, the situation escalated, and it took a dark, unexpected turn. Ukraine didn't have much of a traditional navy, but they had ingenuity, and they had drones. In the dead of night, sleek, jet-black Ukrainian sea drones, packed with explosives, began skipping across the waves toward the Russian fleet. Boom! A landing ship takes a hit. Boom! A patrol boat goes, up in flames. And then, the unthinkable. The Moskva, the pride of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, a behemoth of steel and radar, gets struck by Ukrainian missiles and sinks into the dark depths. Suddenly, the Russian admirals realized the horrifying reality of their geography. Their ships were being hunted. They were taking heavy losses. In a normal war, if you lose a ship, you sail a replacement in from another fleet. But remember the trapdoor. Turkey had locked the strait. Russia could not bring a single new warship into the Black Sea to replace the ones going down in flames. The mighty Black Sea fleet was no longer an attacking force. They were fish in a barrel. Slowly, methodically, they were forced to retreat further and further east, hiding in ports, terrified of the open water. The Montreux Convention was choking the Russian war machine to death. Section 6. Building the unthinkable. This is where the story shifts from a current war to a future earthquake. You might think Turkey is perfectly happy with this setup. They hold the keys, they control the power, but there is a massive problem with the Bosporus Strait today. It was never meant to handle modern global trade. Today, the Bosporus is one of the most dangerously overcrowded waterways on Earth. Massive oil tankers carrying millions of gallons of crude weave blindly through dense fog, dodging local ferries and fishing boats. The currents are brutal, the turns are sharp. Over the years, there have been terrifying accidents. Tankers colliding, explosions lighting up the Istanbul skyline, oil washing up on the doorsteps of centuries-old palaces. For the people of Istanbul, living next to the Bosphorus is like living next to a highway where semi-trucks routinely drive with their eyes closed. The Turkish government decided they had enough. They needed a bypass. So, President Erdogan announced a project so massive, so insanely ambitious, that many people thought it was a joke. It is called Canal Istanbul. Turkey is literally trying to dig a second Bosphorus. They are carving a 28-mile-long artificial canal parallel to the natural strait, slicing right through the European side of Istanbul. It requires moving billions of cubic feet of earth, destroying forests, displacing communities, and spending upwards of $15 billion. But this isn't just about reducing traffic. This is about rewriting the rules of the world. Section 7. The legal loophole. Remember the Montreux Convention, that dusty 1936 treaty that gives Turkey the power to trap the Russian fleet? Read the fine print. The Montreux Convention specifically governs the traffic through the natural straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles. It says absolutely nothing about an artificial canal dug in the 2020s. This realization sent shockwaves through the Pentagon, the Kremlin, and every naval command center on Earth. If Turkey finishes Canal Istanbul, they could theoretically argue that the new canal is not subject to the 1936 treaty. It is a private Turkish waterway. What does that mean? It means Turkey could charge whatever toll they want for ships to pass through, but far more dangerously, it means Turkey could decide to let NATO warships, like American aircraft carriers, sail straight into the Black Sea whenever they want. For Russia, this is the ultimate doomsday scenario. The entire reason they tolerate being trapped in the Black Sea is because the Montreux Convention also keeps their enemies out. If the US Navy can bypass the treaty using a Turkish mega canal, the Black Sea ceases to be a Russian safe zone. It becomes a NATO playground. Right now, the dirt is moving. The political battles in Turkey over this canal are fierce. Environmentalists warn it will destroy the region's water supply. Economists warn it will bankrupt the country. But the geopolitical wheels are turning. The people who wrote the Montreux Convention in 1936 could never have imagined stealth sea drones blowing up billion-dollar cruisers. They could never have imagined a country simply deciding to dig a new ocean channel with modern excavators to bypass their treaty. But this is the reality of geography. We often think of power as something you can build in a factory. More jets, bigger bombs, faster ships. But the truth is, the most powerful weapons on Earth are not made of steel or uranium. They are made of water and rock. Russia spent decades building a fleet meant to project fear, but because they do not control the narrow strip of water separating Europe from Asia, their mighty ships are nothing more than floating targets, unable to fight, unable to flee, and unable to return home. Turkey didn't fire a single bullet to neutralize the Russian reinforcements. They just closed the gate, and as the shovels dig deeper into the earth for Canal Istanbul, the entire balance of global power is shifting with the dirt. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how big your ship is. If you don't hold the keys to the gate, you're just a prisoner waiting for the water to drain.